What if I told you that the war we're witnessing right now between Iran, Israel, and the United States isn't just political? What if someone had already seen it coming decades ago, not from a military strategy room but from a small, quiet monastery in southern Italy? A man who didn't wear a general's uniform, but the robe of a humble friar. A man marked by inexplicable wounds who spent nights battling invisible forces, and who claimed to have seen events that would shake the world. That man was Padre Pio. And according to those closest to him, he spoke about this war, not in newspapers or on stages, but in confessions, in letters, and in whispered warnings that the church tried to bury in silence. Because what he saw wasn't just a war of nations. It was a spiritual collision, the kind that begins in the invisible and ends in the ashes of the visible. This video is not about politics. It's not about headlines. It's about the truth behind the headlines, a message sent not to the powerful but to the faithful. To you. Because Padre Pio didn't just describe the rise of tension in the East. He warned us of a fire that would come not only through bombs and armies, but through the hearts of men who turned away from God. He saw the silence before the storm. And now that storm has arrived. If you've been feeling the weight of what's happening in the world, if your spirit senses that something bigger is unfolding behind the chaos, stay with me. Because over the next few minutes, we'll uncover the forgotten words of one of the holiest men of the 20th century, and how his prophecy might explain what's really happening today between Iran, Israel, and America. Let's begin. To understand the weight of Padre Pio's warnings, we first have to understand who he truly was. Because he wasn't just a priest. He was a spiritual battleground. A man who carried in his own body the marks of Christ. Real wounds, visible and bleeding, that baffled scientists and silenced skeptics. Born Francesco Forgione in 1887 in a small Italian village called Pietrelcina, Padre Pio lived a life hidden from the world, at least at first. From childhood, he claimed to have visions of angels and demons, and even conversations with Jesus and the Virgin Mary. But those around him thought it was just the imagination of a devout boy, until things began to happen that no one could explain. At the age of 23 he was ordained a priest. But it was in 1918, during a time of global unrest, that something extraordinary occurred. Padre Pio received the stigmata. Bleeding sores appeared on his hands, feet, and side, the same wounds suffered by Christ on the cross. They didn't heal. They didn't get infected. They simply bled silently as he prayed, confessed, and offered Mass for the souls of the world. But this was just the surface. Padre Pio's life was marked by miracles. People testified to instant healings. Others reported seeing him in two places at once, bilocation as it's called. Some claimed to smell the scent of roses, the odor of sanctity, whenever he was near, even when he was nowhere in sight. But Padre Pio never sought fame. He never performed on stages or sought to be followed. He suffered in silence, often battling dark forces at night, literally attacked by demons in his cell. His body was found bruised, beaten, even burned, yet he never complained. He often said, "The devil is like a mad dog tied by a chain. He can't reach you unless you go near him." And yet, people came from all over the world just to confess to him. They waited hours, sometimes days, because they knew that Padre Pio didn't just listen. He saw. He looked into your soul like a mirror. He called out sins people had never spoken aloud. He knew things no human should know. But here's where it becomes even more intense. Padre Pio didn't only see your past. He often spoke about your future. And according to those close to him, he spoke of wars that would come, of lands that would burn, and of a time when the East would rise against the West in a conflict far more spiritual than military. He spoke of a day when even the faithful would tremble. When churches would be desecrated, the sky would turn black, and nations would bleed not because of politics, but because God was being forgotten. And while the Vatican kept many of these revelations hidden, a few slipped through. In private letters. In conversations that were recorded. In the trembling memories of the faithful who heard his voice crack as he warned, "The world is walking in darkness. The blood of the innocent will cry out louder than ever. Pray. Pray before it's too late." At the time, people thought he was speaking of World War II. But those who knew him best say he was speaking of something that hadn't happened yet. And today, as missiles fly across borders, and sacred lands become war zones once again, many are asking, was Padre Pio speaking about this? Was the war between Iran, Israel, and the West part of the vision he saw in tears? We may never know for sure. But one thing is certain. Padre Pio's life was not just a life of miracles. It was a message. And the moment we ignore that message is the moment we risk repeating the very warning he tried to give us. Padre Pio never called himself a prophet. He never stood in a pulpit and shouted warnings to crowds. But those closest to him, his spiritual children, fellow friars, even doctors and cardinals, knew that sometimes in moments of deep prayer or unexpected silence, he would speak words that felt too heavy to be human. These weren't just reflections. They were visions, glimpses of events yet to come. And many of them were so intense, so unsettling, that even the church hesitated to record them officially. In one letter dated 1950, hidden from the public for decades, Padre Pio wrote, "There will come a time when men will no longer know the voice of God even when he shouts, and blood will fall on the churches like rain." He spoke of a great darkness descending over the world. He mentioned cities burning, families torn apart, and a silence so terrifying that even the angels would weep. But he didn't only speak in metaphors. According to testimonies, Padre Pio saw a war beginning in the east, spreading like fire into the Holy Land and drawing in the west, not just militarily but spiritually. He said that the cradle of ancient faith would become the birthplace of modern destruction. Sound familiar? Today we see Iran challenging Israel, rockets in the skies, and superpowers like the United States caught in the web, defending, reacting, preparing. But for Padre Pio, this wasn't just about armies. It was about souls. The war was always between light and darkness. In another conversation recorded by one of his spiritual sons, Padre Pio whispered, "The devil is preparing a storm in the east. A war not of soldiers, but of hearts. Many will fall not by bullets but by lies. Truth will be the first casualty." He feared not the weapons but the deception, the moral collapse, the turning away from God disguised as diplomacy. What frightened him most was that people would no longer recognize evil, even as it stood right in front of them. And that includes us. He warned that religious institutions would be tested, that even within the church, confusion would spread, that many would claim to speak for God while serving something else entirely. At the time, those words were seen as too strong, too controversial, too dangerous. But now, as we witness wars begin not just with weapons but with narratives, with ideologies, with spiritual emptiness dressed in patriotism, it's hard not to hear Padre Pio's voice echo through the smoke. One of the most chilling messages attributed to him was this: "When the sun sets in the east and no light reaches the west, know that the time of decision has come. You must choose the cross or the sword." Cryptic? Maybe. But some believe he was referring to a specific moment, a time when darkness would literally and figuratively cover the land, perhaps a blackout, perhaps a global crisis. And in that moment your faith would either anchor you or abandon you. That's why these prophecies weren't shared in homilies. They were whispered behind closed doors. Because Padre Pio didn't want to frighten people. He wanted to prepare them, not for war, but for awakening. And now, decades later, with tensions rising in the Middle East, many are beginning to ask, were these visions about our time? Was he warning us not just about battles between nations, but about the battle inside each one of us? Because the truth is, wars don't start in deserts or palaces. They start in the soul, in the moment we forget who we are and who we serve. And that, above all, was what Padre Pio feared most. To the casual observer, the conflict between Iran, Israel, and the United States is purely political. It's about power, resources, territory. But if we remove the headlines, if we close our eyes to the noise, something much deeper begins to emerge. A spiritual thread that ties these nations together, through prophecy, through sacred texts, and through divine purpose. Let's start with Iran. Long before it became a nation associated with nuclear tension, Iran was Persia, a kingdom referenced throughout the Bible. It was King Cyrus of Persia who freed the Jews from Babylonian captivity and allowed them to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. That act, over 2,500 years ago, made Persia a vessel of divine will. But over centuries something shifted. Modern Iran, as it stands now, has positioned itself as an adversary of Israel and the West. Its leaders openly vow destruction. Its ideology often aligns with the erasure of Christian and Jewish presence. And yet, this isn't just history repeating itself. It's spiritual inversion. A nation once used to protect the chosen people, now rises against them. It's no coincidence. Padre Pio often said, "The enemy hides in the familiar." He speaks ancient tongues with modern weapons. Now look at Israel, a land of prophecy, a land of conflict, a land of miracles and tragedy. Every war that touches Israel seems to stir something beyond the natural. It's the only country whose very existence is tied to divine covenant, to the promise given to Abraham, to the cries of Moses, to the tears of Christ. And as the world watches rockets fly over Jerusalem, Padre Pio's whispered prophecy resurfaces. When the land of God is shaken, the heavens weep, and angels draw swords. He wasn't speaking metaphorically. For the mystic friar, the land of Israel was a spiritual epicenter, a pressure point, and any war involving that land would ripple through every soul on earth, whether they noticed or not. But how does the United States fit into this spiritual triangle? It's simple. For over a century, America has positioned itself as a guardian of Israel. A defender of democracy, yes, but also, unknowingly, a player in biblical prophecy. Many theologians have long debated whether the U.S. is referenced in Scripture, under symbols like the eagle or unnamed nations from distant lands. Padre Pio never mentioned America directly, but he did speak of a great land of light that would one day face darkness from within. A place of blessing that would be tempted to forget its blessings. A nation whose protection of the sacred would make it a target, not just of enemies but of judgment. The protector shall be tested, he said, and its strength will not be in missiles but in faith. That's the connection. Iran, ancient Persia, turned against its divine role. Israel, the sacred promise, under attack once more. And the United States, the defender, caught between pride and providence. This war isn't just about bombs. It's about alignment. Who stands for the sacred? Who perverts it? Who watches and does nothing? The spiritual battle Padre Pio foresaw was never just one of good versus evil in black and white. It was subtle, strategic, symbolic, and it began long before the first soldiers stepped onto the battlefield. Now, as tensions escalate, we're forced to see that these three nations, whether they like it or not, carry roles far greater than their borders. They are fulfilling something older than themselves, something written, and perhaps something warned by a man who prayed alone in a stone cell, bleeding for a world too busy to notice. There's a reason Padre Pio rarely smiled when he spoke about the future. His gift was not just in healing the sick or reading hearts. He was burdened with visions that no man should carry. Visions of fire, of silence, of a world on its knees. And among the many things he saw, one fear haunted him more than any other. That a war would come, and with it, a great purification. But not the kind of war most people imagine. He wasn't afraid of tanks or missiles. He didn't tremble at the idea of nuclear bombs. What frightened Padre Pio was what war would awaken inside us. He believed that when nations go to war, it's often a symptom of a deeper disease, a spiritual rot. And if left unchecked, that disease spreads, until only fire remains. Padre Pio once said to a fellow friar, "The fire that comes will not burn the skin. It will burn the conscience." What did he mean? He believed a time would come when humanity would be so blinded by pride, by power, by distraction, that God would allow a storm to rise, not to destroy us, but to purify us. And he believed that storm would begin in the East. In his darkest writings, which the Church kept hidden for decades, Padre Pio mentioned a fire starting where the prophets once walked. That place most believe is the Middle East. And in recent months, as Iran stirs the world with threats and Israel responds with force, it's hard not to feel the trembling in the spirit. But what does purification actually mean? For Padre Pio, it wasn't about punishment. It was about awakening. He feared that the world had grown deaf to God, that even believers had begun to worship comfort instead of truth. He saw war not just as destruction, but as a final cry from heaven, a divine scream to shake the soul awake. The Lord will permit the world to be broken, he once said, so that what cannot be broken may rise. This is what he meant by purification. Not annihilation, but separation. Between the false and the faithful. Between those who pray out of fear, and those who pray from the fire within. And now, as this war unfolds, we're beginning to see it. Churches being destroyed. Children crying in bomb shelters. Faith being tested, not in theory but in the raw heat of suffering. And here's the hardest truth of all. We're not just watching the purification. We're in it. The war between Iran, Israel, and the United States isn't just a conflict on the news. It's a reflection of what's happening inside every soul. A battle between light and shadow. Between surrender and control. And Padre Pio warned that during this time many would fall, not from bombs but from despair. That some would abandon their faith entirely. That others would rise not through strength, but through brokenness. He begged people to prepare. Not by storing food, but by cleansing the heart. Go to confession often, he said. Pray the rosary every day. Fast. Forgive. Stay close to the Blessed Mother. Do these things and you will survive the storm, not just with your body but with your soul. For Padre Pio, the true war wasn't Iran versus Israel, or East versus West. It was the war to protect what is sacred in a world that no longer values the sacred. And in his mind, this war, this purification, was necessary. Because before the dawn comes, the night must pass. Before resurrection, there must be crucifixion. And before peace, comes truth. Painful, terrifying, but freeing. And now the question is no longer, will war come? It's already here. The real question is, how will you respond? When asked how to survive the chaos he foresaw, Padre Pio never answered with fear. He answered with clarity, with urgency. Because to him, survival was never about the body, it was about saving the soul. He once said, "The time will come when only those who pray will be able to see clearly." It wasn't just poetic. It was a warning. He believed the greatest danger of war wasn't destruction, it was deception. That in the noise of conflict, people would forget who they are. They would trade truth for convenience, faith for fear, silence for screams. So he gave us a roadmap. Not a survival kit for bunkers, but a set of spiritual weapons. The first, confession. Padre Pio called it the soul's bath. He insisted that we cleanse ourselves often, not just from major sins, but from the pride, anger, and indifference that creep in quietly. Go weekly, he told his spiritual children. Even if you think you've done nothing wrong, the enemy works in the small things. The second, the rosary. He didn't just recommend it. He begged people to pray it daily, especially in times of fear. The rosary is the weapon for these times, he said. It can stop wars. It can protect nations. It can save souls. He believed each bead was a shield, each mystery a spiritual missile, and each Hail Mary, a whisper that reached heaven faster than any scream. The third instruction? Fasting. But not just from food. Padre Pio taught fasting of the heart. Fasting from gossip, from distraction, from the addiction to noise. Fast from comfort, he said, so you may feel the hunger of the Spirit. The fourth? Charity. War makes us selfish. It makes us suspicious, cold, distant. But Padre Pio warned that in the time of purification, we must do the opposite. We must serve. We must give, even if we have little. One act of love will echo louder than 1,000 bombs, he once said. And finally, the fifth? Silence. Not passive silence, but sacred silence. He believed that in the storms to come, those who could sit in silence with God would be protected, not just physically but spiritually. When the world screams, he said, be the whisper that listens to heaven. These instructions may seem small, but Padre Pio never believed in grand gestures. He believed in discipline, in obedience, in doing the small things with great love. And that's where the true battle is won. Because in the end, the war between Iran, Israel, and America will be written in history books. But the war inside your soul? That's written in eternity. So the question isn't, what will happen next? The question is, are you ready? Not ready to run, not ready to fight, but ready to stand with clean hands, a clear heart, and a spirit that knows where it belongs, before it's too late. As Padre Pio grew older, those around him noticed something strange. He became quieter, more withdrawn. And yet, when he did speak, especially about the future, his words carried a weight that silenced even the proudest men. One of the last messages he shared before his death was not to a cardinal or a world leader, but to a humble nun. He looked her in the eyes and whispered, there will be a shaking. The whole world will feel it. But those who are rooted in heaven will not fall. That was it. No dates, no locations, just a truth that hung in the air like thunder before a storm. Many believe this was his final warning. A spiritual earthquake. A moment when everything would stop, and humanity would be forced to look in the mirror. Not just governments, not just armies. Every individual soul. This wake-up call wouldn't be gentle. It wouldn't come through sermons or soft music. It would come through shock. A moment of undeniable clarity. A flash of divine confrontation. And he warned, most people still wouldn't be ready. God will not be silent forever, he said. He will shake the heavens and the earth so the deaf may hear. Padre Pio described it as a moment where the veil between the spiritual and the physical would be torn open. Where people would see, not just with their eyes but with their spirit. He said the lies would melt. The masks would fall. And every person would feel the full truth of their own soul. That's the wake-up call. Not punishment, not wrath, but truth, unfiltered, unavoidable, and eternal. And it would come, Padre Pio believed, during a time of global tension. A moment when the world was already on edge. When countries were staring each other down. When fear and pride ruled the headlines. Sound familiar? He said this shaking would expose leaders, uncover secret sins, and reveal the hidden motives behind every war, every decision, every silence. But more importantly, it would reveal us. Each man will stand before his conscience as he would before God, he said. And some won't like what they see. For those who lived in the light, it will be painful, but purifying. For those who built their lives on lies, it will feel like fire. This is why Padre Pio never stopped urging people to prepare, not just for war but for this moment. The moment when God says, "Now look." No more pretending. No more delay. No more hiding behind politics or religion or excuses. Just truth. The question is, will we recognize it? Will we receive it? Or will we run? Padre Pio didn't say this to scare people. He said it because he loved them. He wept over souls more than he ever wept over wounds. And he knew that a day was coming when the noise of the world would be silenced, and only truth would remain. That is the wake-up call. And when it comes, it won't ask for your passport, your profession, or your followers. We'll ask, were you ready to be known? Because the truth is, this war between nations is loud. But the whisper of God, that's what we should fear missing. There comes a moment when the battle is no longer out there, but right here, inside us, in our silence, in the way we treat a stranger, in the way we resist or respond to the call of God. Padre Pio never said the final war would be won with bullets. He believed it would be fought in prayer, in sacrifice, and in the willingness to choose truth even when it hurts. And now, as Iran, Israel, and the United States edge closer to open conflict, we're watching the world slide into another chapter of chaos. But the true battle? It's already begun. You can feel it. In the restlessness of the soul. In the pressure to give up, give in, or go numb. In the way people are more divided than ever, not just politically but spiritually. There's a pulling, a shaking. A divine tension that Padre Pio warned would tear through every nation, every church, every heart. He called it the battle for the soul of humanity. And according to him, it wouldn't be fought in one day, but in every decision we make from now on. The devil is like a rabid dog, he once said. He is chained. But if you approach too close, he will bite. What are we approaching too closely today? Is it pride? Greed? Comfort? Or is it the temptation to stop believing that God still speaks, still moves, still wins? Because that's exactly what this battle is about. It's about whether we'll still believe when the world looks like it's falling apart. It's about whether we'll stand when everyone else kneels to fear. It's about what we're willing to lose in order to save what's eternal. Padre Pio didn't want heroes. He wanted holy resistance. Men and women who would fast when the world feasted. Who would kneel when others mocked prayer. Who would hold the line of faith even when it hurt. Because the spiritual war is not obvious. It looks like exhaustion. It sounds like compromise. It feels like silence. But if you look closer, you'll see it's exactly what he described. A world asleep, and heaven shaking it awake. This is why we must act now, not in panic but in purpose. Pray like it matters. Forgive like it's urgent. Love like it's your last chance. And repent like the war is already here, because it is. Do not be afraid of suffering, Padre Pio said. Jesus is with you. This is not the end of the world. But it may be the beginning of your awakening. The war between Iran, Israel, and America may rage for months or years. But the war inside of you, the war to choose light over shadow, faith over fear, that's eternal. And it's happening now. So ask yourself, what side are you on? Not politically, not culturally, but spiritually? Because Padre Pio saw this moment coming. He wept for it. He prayed for it. And now he's passed the torch to us. To see what he saw. To feel what he felt. And to fight the invisible war with the weapons of heaven. So take up your rosary, guard your soul, and walk into this battle with courage. Because the final hour won't come with a trumpet. It will come with a whisper. And only those who listen will recognize it. If you made it this far, it's not by accident. Something inside you knows the truth. That the headlines aren't the whole story. That Padre Pio didn't speak for the past, he spoke for now. You were meant to hear this. Not just with your ears, but with your soul. Because in a world chasing noise and fear, your heart is still seeking something sacred. And this video? It's just the beginning of that journey. So before you go, take a moment to breathe. Ask yourself, am I spiritually ready for what's coming? If the answer is no, don't panic. That's why you're here. To remember, to reconnect, to return. Now more than ever, we need voices of light. And you can be one of them. Subscribe if you felt something shift inside you today. Like this video if Padre Pio's message spoke to your spirit. Share it with someone who's been feeling the weight of the world, but doesn't know where to turn. Let's awaken more souls, before it's too late. Because this isn't about algorithms. It's not about views. It's about souls waking up, one video at a time. And if you're reading this, you've already started.